Hi, everybody. Tiffany Jensen, CCJ 3701, Research Methods in Criminology. So we're going to go into Intro to Quantitative Research. This lecture should be a little bit shorter than the qualitative one. So we'll just get right after it again so that we can get a good overview of what we're talking about. So again, just by way of review, quantitative research and qualitative research, they are basically just two different types of research or two different ways of going about doing research. So we kind of call them two camps, and it's the how you go about finding out what you want to know. So quantitative, again, quantities, statistics, surveys, big data, some of those things, and then qualitative is, the deep, rich interview, focus group, ethnography, more individual level stuff. So it's high quality, but you can't really apply it broadly. Quantitative is not quite as deep on the quality, but you can apply it to nearly everybody because you have such good variety in there. So anyway, we'll again do that comparison, how they work together, and give you some examples to work with. So quantitative. Quant is the what, where, and when of natural phenomena. So we use mathematical models, we make predictions, hypotheses pertaining to what we think is going to happen. We usually get large samples of subjects, meaning people, and we look at cause and effect. Associated with positivism, we can find some kind of objective truth with a degree of certainty that we can gain through rational methods. And so it's something that can be quite easily replicated. We should all get the same result if we're analyzing the same data and using the same statistical technique. If we don't, something is wrong. But yeah, quantitative's really kind of cool that way. You could be getting crime reports. You could be getting information on length of stay in some kind of prison program. You could be getting all kinds of stuff that needs to be analyzed for maybe just even what I call surface level statistics, averages, counts, frequencies, percents. That can still answer a lot of questions that your boss, your governor, your commissioner, your mayor, your chief, your director may want to know. So that's kind of the cool part of quantitative is you could generalize, and that's why people like it and defer to it a lot. So a note on positivism, it's kind of like the word positive. We can feel very positive about what we're doing. It uses the scientific method to come up with a topic, to explore that topic, maybe make predictions about it, then go do some observation to see if what they predict is really happening, and then basically analyze what is going on, eventually apply a theory to it, and that's just one version of the scientific method. So it follows that kind of idea. But in positivism, we basically say a single reality is out there that multiple people can come into contact about, that we can study it independently and arrive at a conclusive truth. And the big part of this, it separates the observer from the observed. So it lets us say, hey, I need to let behavior and people be and exist as they are naturally. I realize I have morals and biases and opinions and thoughts that might influence what I'm trying to observe, and I'm supposed to keep that at bay. So it's trying to make sure we remain objective and not influencing what we're seeing and doing. It assumes linear causality, that things happen in some kind of time order with some kind of before and after cause and effect. However, in social science research, we're very careful about cause and effect. We can't say, I don't think ever that this causes this to the exclusion of everything else on the planet. It just doesn't work like that. And we do find risk factors. We find predictors. We find correlates, things that tend to occur together. And those can be incredibly helpful in making predictions and probabilities about human beings and the things they're going to do or the kind of things they can get into. So the results are supposed to be free from belief and interpretation, but I argue people can never do value-free research because just by virtue of picking a topic, you have exerted some kind of value of the way you think and feel about that topic. So, to me, you can never do that, but we're supposed to be mindful of those thoughts and feelings so that it doesn't influence the work and we let things occur naturally. And I think we can do that to a very strong ability, and I'm going to teach you some tricks on how to do that in this class so that you can be mindful of how you might unduly influence what you're trying to analyze. So quantitative issues, we love quantitative. You'll see it in demography, you'll see it in marketing and statistics and so many places where We like to collect a lot of data and come to big conclusions about phenomena. We look at equity, we look at patterns of use, we look at experience, usually across surveys and archived data, but it can produce a false sense of certainty where we go, this is how it is and only how it is. Well, we should replicate, we should look across studies and across surveys and see if we're continuing to find the same result. So we don't want to be absolute about anything, but it is nice to be able to generalize. It takes the subject out of the natural setting. Okay, so I want to study juvenile delinquents, and I'm going to have them come to this office and fill out this survey. So they're not in some kind of juvenile detention hall, they're not in the principal's office, they're not in foster care, they're outside of maybe where they would naturally be. That might change how they answer the questions, or they may forget things when they answer questions, and so we feel like maybe that environment or condition may be important to consider when they're answering questions. So the way a kid answers questions while they're incarcerated is different from when they answer questions while they're on probation, and is different how they answer questions when they're in school. So we have to think about that. With the experimental method, it can result in what we call no significant difference. I can't tell you how many times I've had students run statistical analyses and then find out that something is not statistically significant, or it doesn't really allow you to say that these two things matter together or predict each other or see some kind of difference going on. And they're just devastated. You're going, oh, Jensen, I don't know what to do. I got no statistical significance. That means my study is terrible. It's a fraud. It's a failure. I said, no, actually it's not. It just means that you got a result that was different than what you expected. And you get to talk about that now in your paper, and that's really exciting. You may have just busted a myth where maybe you thought everybody assumed that this is the way things work, and you found out it actually doesn't work that way at all. It works this way. That's still incredibly fascinating, and you still have a finding. You found out a truth that was different than what you predicted. That's it. That's it. So I tell people, don't get too caught up in statistically significant. I'm going to teach you about how that works and the things we run in SPSS so you get really comfortable with it. The Hawthorne effect, or we call it a placebo, where there's some other kind of thing going on, really explaining things. If you want to see what Hawthorne actually came from, it comes from a factory, the Hawthorne effect factory, where we were testing workers trying to be more productive, and we didn't know if it was because they were being studied, they started to change their behavior, and we go, is that really what's happening, or is there some other explanation for why we're seeing what we're seeing? It might be some variable or some topic or category of things going on that we didn't even track in the survey. We didn't even observe. We didn't even gather. So you'll see that. When is quantitative useful? When you want to generalize. You can get a simple random sample. Maybe you have a collection of people that are kind of ready to go, kind of at your whim. Maybe you work in a probation office or a correctional center or a court, and you already have a group of people participating in your jurisdiction or your program, and they're kind of a captive audience, and you can study them. When gathering data through surveys or interviews, you want those large numbers. The reason we like large numbers is for generalizability, and it also is required to run certain statistics. You have to have a certain amount of information. Otherwise, the statistic's inaccurate and you can't run it. So there are certain requirements for certain statistics that we'll talk about. Quantitative is useful in relationship to qualitative if the topic has surfaced new themes that you want to test over a large group of people. So maybe somebody did some focus group with probationers, and they're like, hey, I think this is going on across multiple populations of people on probation, but I don't know. And you go, hey, let's actually test that. Let's run some stats and see if that is actually going on. If it's only been examined in small groups of people and you want to move it across a larger group, or you would like some higher level kind of data that goes beyond the deep, rich experience, the story, and it kind of goes across the experience of the whole population. So when you're wanting to go bigger and you're wanting to generalize, that's when you're going to find it more useful. So we're just going to spend a few minutes on the kinds of methods most usually used in quantitative approaches. So, of course, surveys. Survey instruments contain questions for someone to answer. We've all taken them. There are good surveys and bad surveys. I'll tell you, you sometimes run into what I call survey fatigue. you get some email that says, please take this survey, and it'll only take you 10 minutes. And on minute 28, you go, okay, you lied. This is taking forever. And I don't want to do this, and I'm tired of doing this. And, so then you quit the survey, you close it, you're like, you give up. We do not want that to happen. So we come up with things with survey design, ask good questions, easy to understand questions, tell people really how much time they're going to spend on it, maybe use some incentives to encourage them to participate. There's a way to write a good survey that gives you good participation and things that are really frustrating to people on the other end of the survey. So we're going to try to avoid those pitfalls. They can be a pre-selected answer choice. I call them pick lists, where you kind of have this, this, or this, and you have to choose one of them. It can be an open-ended, where you kind of get to write in a response. We have hundreds of thousands of people that take it maybe through the web or through the mail. There's a lot of ways to administer surveys. I've actually been in an auditorium full of 398 inmates where we were passing out pencils and paper and having them write answers down that asked them about their incarceration, their families, their programs, their experiences. And people like to tell their story. And they must have sat there for at least, 60 minutes, writing down everything. And then we had to go take all those back and put them all into the computer, which took forever. But that was the best way that we could actually get the inmates to participate, because we couldn't use electronic devices. If you work in corrections, that's contraband, and you have to be very careful with bringing in computers and cell phones. So you have to be kind of creative with how you reach your audience. Surveys appear less accurate and impersonal to some people, depending on the format and the population, especially criminals or subcultures. So if you go, okay, I'd like to get a random sample of heroin users, please. That's not going to happen. People feel funny revealing who they are. They don't want to self-incriminate or put themselves in danger. It's very difficult to study what I call hidden populations, people on the run, people maybe who are doing illegal things and who don't want anyone to know. So sometimes it's not practical to do a survey with people that are doing those things. You have to be thinking about anonymity and confidentiality. You can use statistical analyses to make predictions using different kinds of questions. The topics we look for to construct the question we call a variable, because the answer varies inside of it, depending on what someone said, to determine various outcomes and likelihoods of things happening. So that's what we're going to spend a lot of class time on. Last but not least, archived data sources. Hopefully you have seen these things in your other criminology classes. So it could be data obtained from clients, customers, programs, intake, registries, census, directory, websites, often provided in some sort of spreadsheet from your organization, needing to be organized into variables or categories. So often you have to put it together and organize it so that you can keep track of one person from another or one group from another. You want to keep a good relationship with the database analyst and the developer of the data, so you know the story behind the data, how they got it, what's in there. You might find some quirks in there that you're maybe willing to throw out, but then someone tells you, oh no, that person just had a different ID number because they came into the organization before 2016, and then we changed systems later, so that's why they look different. And then you go, oh, okay, I don't want to throw that out. So you want to know all those little nuances if you get archived data. You'll get, criminal justice will give you uniform crime reports from the FBI. You have NIBRS, the National Incidence-Based Reporting System, NCVS, National Crime Victimization Survey, Census Bureau, so many kind of standing data sets that you can jump in and look at. One thing I'll show you in this class as well is occasionally you'll run into restricted data. So, for example, I was doing a study of sex offenders, juvenile sex offenders in Massachusetts. I had to sign my life away and get all these approvals and meet all these restrictions in order to get access to the data, because they were people that were minors, highly private, highly sensitive information about their lives, and they wanted to make sure it didn't get into the wrong hands or be revealed publicly. So you're going to see stuff like that occasionally. So anyway, that's the end of quantitative. Hopefully this helps you separate qualitative and quantitative a little better. And I went a little longer than I thought. I apologize for that. But this will help you get started this week, so you start to see how this matters, why this works, and some of the skills we're going to be going into. So reach out to me if you have questions. I know this was super fast, and take care.